State for Wales since Rishi Sunak became PM just over a year ago. In a previous life, the MP for Monmouth was a special constable and a keen amateur boxer. Another with an interesting past is Sir Chris Bryant. After time as an Anglican priest and then a stint at the BBC, he completed a novel hat-trick with election to Parliament for Rhondda in 2001. Now he's Labour's Shadow Minister for the Creative Industries and Digital. The leader of Plaid Cymru's 4 MPs at Westminster is Liz Saville-Roberts. Plaid, or the Party of Wales, are committed to Welsh independence and also have just under a quarter of seats in the Welsh Parliament or Senedd, where they work closely with the governing Labour group. As a professional soprano, Camilla Kerslake has sung to capacity crowds at the Millennium Stadium, Wembley and Old Trafford, so an audience in North Wales tonight should be no problem. She was the first signing on Gary Barlow's record label and now combines her music with her social mobility charity, the Kerslake Robshaw Foundation. And Anne McElvoy is the executive editor at the news organisation Politico and host of the podcast Power Play. She has a column for The Eye and London Evening Standard and stretches her mind further on Radio 4's Moral Maze. Good evening, welcome to our panellists, welcome to our audience here in Llandudno. Lovely to see you, and of course, welcome to you at home. There's always a lively conversation on social media. Feel free to join in, and you can always watch the programme, listen to the programme rather, on BBC Sounds after the end of the programme. So, should we get started with our first question? It is from Karen Britton.
Should Suella Braverman go?
Well, the Home Secretary's been quite busy. And she, for those of you not fully across it, she has written a piece in the Times newspaper today talking about the pro-Palestinian marches, and she has criticised the police, saying there is a perception that senior police officers play favourites when it comes to protesters. Right-wing and nationalist protesters who engage in aggression are rightly met with a stern response, yet pro-Palestinian mobs, in her words, displaying almost identical behaviour, are largely ignored, even when breaking the law. Should Suella Braverman go, David?
Well, certainly not. I've got confidence in all of my Cabinet colleagues. But can I say, I've read the article, and I didn't read it the way everyone else seems to have done. We know that there have been issues with policing because the police have recognised that themselves. We know that during the COVID lockdown period, the Black Lives Matters protests were treated fairly leniently, but women's rights protesters who protested quite reasonably about the fact that a woman had been raped and murdered by a serving police officer were treated, frankly, in an unacceptable fashion. And the police apologised for that. So police don't always get it right. I've been a police officer. It's very difficult to get it right. The police need to acknowledge that it's hard to do it and they can't always get it right. And what
the police have not done is said that they are guilty of political bias, which is what the Home Secretary is accusing them of.
What I think Suella is saying is that Jewish people at the moment are feeling unsafe on the streets. It's the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht today, and Jewish people have told me, a student has told me, that she is concerned to go out with the Star of David on. That is absolutely appalling. And I think what Suella wants, what I and all the rest of the Cabinet want, and to be fair, across the political board, is to live in a society where Jewish people feel as safe to walk the streets as anyone else. I mean, only yesterday, Andrew R.T. Davis was advised by security that because of protests, pro-Palestinian protesters outside the Senedd, he was advised not to walk in certain areas. What is the world coming to when elected representatives like that are told they can't walk in certain places? And what I would appeal to the Palestinian protest march organisers to do is to look at some of the extremist statements that are being made by people, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic statements, and distance themselves from those statements and from those extremists.
So can I ask you, do you agree with Suella Braverman, your friend, as you say, that the police are guilty of political bias when it comes to protests?
The police have accepted that there have been occasions in the past where they haven't always got it right.
I know you've made that point already. I'm asking a different one. Well, do you agree that getting it wrong is motivated by political bias, which is what the Home Secretary is claiming?
I think it's more complicated than that. I think it's very, very difficult to get it right in all instances, and I welcome the fact that the police have acknowledged that in the past.
So you don't quite agree with her, then?
Well, I'm putting it in my way, and other people can put it their way, but the real issue here is that Jewish people are finding it unsafe to walk around the streets, so I think we should be thinking about that rather than worrying about the exact wording used by the Home Secretary, who, like every member of this government...
OK, we might not be worrying about it if she hadn't put a piece in the Times about it, in fairness. Chris?
Well, I'll start with the bit where I agree with David, which is that everybody in this country should feel safe when they walk the streets, regardless of their religion, their creed, their colour or their background. And I do worry, of course, that at this time there are Jewish people in the country, kids who feel they're unable to go to school with the Star of David showing on their school uniform. That is a very worrying place to be in. But I say this, it is absolutely right that there's no place for hate on our streets, but there's no place for hate in the Home Office either. And I think that when... And I think when you're Home Secretary, you have a very special responsibility not to undermine the police in doing their job properly. And that's effectively what she's done. She's not commenting on something that happened 6 months ago. She's commenting on something, a disagreement that she's had this week with the police. And I think the police should be allowed to do their job properly. It's a fundamental premise of our system that politicians don't tell police officers who you can and who you can't arrest. Yeah. We write the laws and then the police implement the laws.
So when you say Suella, there's no place for hate in the Home Office, who are you saying that Suella Braverman hates?
I think she's shown hatred for a series of different groups over the last few months. And for me, this is not... I've just come to them, but for instance, I think it was completely inappropriate of her to say that homelessness is a lifestyle choice. How can that be right?
What are you saying? She hates homeless people?
Well, I think she's betraying a degree of hatred in that, yes. And I'll tell you why, because I've done a lot of work on brain injury. There's lots of evidence from a report in 2019 that a significant number of the people who are sleeping rough these days, and incidentally the numbers have gone up 74% since 2010, are people who've had a brain injury. They haven't chosen to be in that situation. So, but you know, there are other reasons why I don't think she's suitable.
And so do you think she should go, Chris? Because the question is, should Suella Braverman go? So should the Prime Minister sack her?
Well, why is she Home Secretary when 90% of crimes go unsolved at the moment?
OK, but what's your answer to that question?
Well, I'm coming to it, but why is she Home Secretary when the asylum backlog has gone up and we're spending millions of pounds every week on putting asylum seekers in hotels? Okay. I'll tell you why.
Now, I want you to answer the question from Karen. Should she go?
And I'll tell you why she's there. It's because Rishi Sunak is too weak to sack her.
OK. Should she go? I cannot put it plainly. Yes. That's the question. Right.
But Rishi Sunak won't sack her because he's far too weak. He either agrees with her, in which case he should say so. She's broken the ministerial code. She didn't have what she put in the newspaper last night cleared by number 10 Downing Street. And Rishi Sunak is the person who makes decisions about the ministerial code. Of course, he should do the decent thing, but he is too weak.
Man here in the grey sweater.
She should go, definitely. What people don't understand, these marches, hopefully, will just be pro-Palestinian, no hatred. They're not pro-Hamas, they're just pro-Palestinian people. So as far as I'm concerned, they should have a right to march, but in a nice, peaceful way, and obviously not cause any destruction or violence. That's what they should do, and hopefully 99% of people will do that. So yes, the march should go ahead, and Suella Braverman, whatever you want to call her, should be gone, because in my opinion, she's a racist.
OK. I mean, she is not here to... That's a very serious allegation. She's not here to answer it. I suspect she would disagree with you, but I hear your point.
In my opinion.
The woman there in the black polo neck.
Mr Davis has said that he stands by his colleague. Does that mean he agrees that homelessness is a lifestyle choice?
Well, can I go back to a lot of this?
No, do you want to just answer that question? Let's not go on a sort of trip around.
Is not a racist. Homelessness is caused by many complex factors. And if you look at what Suella was saying, she was saying that there were numbers of people in certain cities who are using homelessness as a means to try and avoid arrest and harassing people on the streets. That's not all people who are homeless. But obviously, we have reduced numbers. I don't know where Chris is getting his statistics from. We've actually reduced homelessness.
The words she used were a lifestyle choice. Do you agree with that? That's what you're being asked.
Not for everyone, of course not. But there are people who harass people on the streets of major cities, and we need to tackle that. And frankly, for Chris to talk about crime and immigration, when at the same time he knows perfectly well his party have voted against every single measure we've brought in to tackle criminality. They've voted against every single measure we brought in to deal with illegal immigration. And we're about to bring in, through the King's speech, measures that will mean that people who commit the worst crimes, rape and murder, can spend their whole lives in prison. And I'll be very interested to see whether the Labour Party, for once, actually back tough measures on criminality.
Let's stick to the point, dare I say, which is Karen's question. Yeah. And I'll come to you in a minute. Anne, should Suella Braverman go?
I do want to say one thing about bandying about the word racism. I notice it happens increasingly frequently. Racism is a really serious charge. We need to be very aware when we think we're making what we're really saying. And I'm about to say lots of things that are not very flattering to Suella Braverman, but I will say she is a woman of colour in politics who's put herself out there. She probably knows more about racial prejudice than many people who raised the charge against her. That was the good bit. The nicer bit. I do feel that she has overstepped. I think a great principle at the moment, and I'm sure we'll come on to Israel and Gaza, is when things are heated in the public debate, first, do no harm is a pretty good principle. And I know I think we'll have big differences on this panel, we'll have big differences with the audience as well on what should happen. But I do think that what she did by writing that piece, had she not written that piece in the Times, I might have been slightly more on the side. I think she was saying a lot of things about the constitution of the marches, upcoming and past, that we need to be aware of. No, they're not only people who have the interests of the peaceful interests of the Palestinian people at heart. There are people who are marching for that. There are also people marching there who are apologists for Hamas, who are apologists for terrorists or who are allowing themselves to be dragged in the tow of that. Many, many people think that Suella Braverman was saying it. What I don't like is that I think her language is too inflammatory. I think she could make her point very strongly without using the words that she uses. And I'm afraid, Chris beat me to it here, she has, simply in terms of the political terms of trade, if you go out there and you submit to, as is usual in Cabinet, what you're going to publish to Number 10, to the Prime Minister, and would not accept edits by the leader of her party, who's also the Prime Minister, all I conclude is that she has no respect for the Prime Minister, and her one big aim out of this is to replace him. So, whether I think she should go, I'm pretty sure that Rishi Sunak would very much like her to go, but he did appoint her Home Secretary, so he's slightly
So do you think, to Chris's point, do you think she's unsackable then?
I don't think she's unsackable, because I think things can, politics, as we know, can turn out to be very fissile and very explosive. It is possible that they'll just have some barnstorming row and that'll be over. But I do think he's probably reluctant to go there, despite the fact that if she were to repeat this or anything like it, there does come a point when his authority would be so damaged by her, you could argue that it has been today. Yep. You really could. And I think that is also her colleagues. We talk a lot about Prime Ministers and Home Secretaries, but the fact is, anyone on the panel who's a politician knows there is collective responsibility. You often have to roll your eyes about things your colleagues say. But I think she has effectively said to the Whip's office and anybody else, I am beyond any discipline in the party. Why should anybody else take any notice? It's very odd behaviour.
Man here in the glasses.
I think everyone will agree that the problems we're facing with these marches and this hate, it's worldwide and it's massive. It's probably the greatest our generation's seen since the Second World War. If our grandparents came back now, they'd think, have we not learnt anything? And it's not easy for anybody in a Home Secretary situation to look at it. The police have put their neck out. We just hope that at the weekend that nobody kicks off in a bad way and it gets out of hand. I hope it never happens, but the police does have the ability to bring in the army if it gets out of hand, so they're not overmanned and trying to do it on their own.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. Can I just ask, is there anyone here who agrees with the Home Secretary's comments? Yes, your hand shot up there, yes.
She's only saying what loads of people are thinking.
And what are you thinking?
I think she's right. She's saying the silent majority. You know, it's really wrong this weekend. It should be left as a solemn
and when she says that the police are basically playing favourites when it comes to protesters, do you agree with that?
Well, she shouldn't interfere with the police. I agree with that.
Okay. But it's just you don't want the march. Go ahead. Yes, and the woman here in the front.
Taking Anna's point about the not putting it through Rishi Sunak, if I'm correct, I heard on the radio that she did submit her article to the office, the Prime Minister's office, and they made some changes, and she didn't submit the changes.
What it appears to be, I'm sure more will become clear, is that Number 10 suggested changes and she didn't make them. But do you support, you put your hand up, do you support what she said?
No, not at all.
Oh, I see. That's what I was calling out for, right.
After you'd spoken to that gentleman.
OK, well, listen, thank you for your point. Camilla, should Suella Braverman go?
She's just not particularly efficacious. I mean, rape convictions are at a record low. She seems to run around saying that she's going to do all these things, and then she doesn't do them. I mean, the Rwanda policy, for example, is just fiscally incredibly irresponsible. Financially, aren't the Tories meant to be the party of, you know, economic responsibility? That's just not what I'm seeing as a non-politician. So,
Do you think she should go?
I do.
It's very important that we say rape convictions are up, and if people are victims of serious sexual assaults, they should go straight to the police, and they should
by
feel
a very
confident.
small amount.
But they are going up.
They've
not
gone up
going
from an
down.
incredibly
Maybe
low
it's
base
right to say
up a tiny bit more.
Yeah,
Let's be clear.
Did I not read today, though, that, or yesterday, that because of overcrowding in prisons, they're going to release stalkers early, revenge porn people early? I mean, this ruins people's lives.
What you
not
would have
protecting
read,
women.
What you would have read is that those who commit serious sexual offences will no longer have the right of early release, and I hope that's something that everyone will support. And those who commit rape and murder will spend the rest of their lives in prison. Now, you know, if you want to ask a tough question, why is it that the Labour Party won't back more prison places? Why are they opposing more prison spaces in Wales, which is what they're doing?
I want you to let Liz actually answer the question that's been
more
asked,
prisons and we're
which
putting more
is,
people
should
inside for
Suella
longer.
Braverman go?
Yeah, and why is your government cut the budget for prison and probation by 11% in real terms?
Yeah. We've been building more places. You're against prisons.
Right.
You're against prisons.
We can come back
Let's
to the
answer
question.
Karen's question.
Yep. Somehow
Let's be
or other,
old-fashioned about
Liz
it. Let's try and
Truss
answer the question.
Managed to sack Suella Braverman, but Rishi Sunak hasn't got the backbone to do it over what I think are way more serious matters. And let us remember what people are marching for on this Saturday. This is Armistice Day. The meaning of armistice is ceasefire. These are people who are calling for a ceasefire. And alongside everything that's been said, we've got to remember that we are here in Wales. I was speaking to the Muslim Council of Wales on Monday. There are families in Wales who have lost multiple family members in Palestine, including children and grandchildren. And we need to remember that. These people are grieving, and they are seeking justice, and they are calling for a ceasefire, as is almost every other country in the world. And at this time, we have this division that is being sown by the Home Secretary. And that is driving anti-Semitism, which we all abhor. And alongside that, it is driving Islamophobia. Now, the one standout meeting that I had this week was with a man called Magon Inon. Again, on Tuesday, it was a month to him losing both of his parents when their house was bombed in a village near the wall. They lived in Israel by the wall near Gaza. That man was calling for, he was saying to us as politicians, seek the moderate voices. Do not allow division to take hold. And I am appalled that we have a Home Secretary who is promoting division for her own political career interests, and yes, she must go.
And the point that the Home Secretary made, which was echoed by David here, that she said during COVID, why was it that lockdown objectors were given no quarter by public order police, yet Black Lives Matter demonstrators were enabled, allowed to break rules? Do you think she has in any way got a point there? That there were different approaches to those two marches?
No, I think the police are doing what their job is. The phrase for the police, which everybody in this room who lives in North Wales will be familiar for, the Welsh word for police is heddlu. The primary role of the police is the keeping of peace in our society. That will be meaning dealing with criminals, and it means balancing the needs of what will actually keep peace in future. And I think possibly that principle is something the Home Secretary could learn from.
Man at the back there.
I tend to agree a little with the chap on my left here, but I wouldn't go as far as to say I agree with her, what she's accused the Met Police of. However, there is an element of truth in there. In fact, the Black Lives Matter is a better example than the one in my head. I was actually thinking of the many demonstrations committed by hundreds in West London in recent weeks. Hundreds of people driving about in cars, flares, flags out of windows, Palestinian flags, to the disquiet of the local population. They don't seem to be present there, the police. In terms of whether she should go or not, I think she should go, but not for that, but for interfering in the operational mandate of the Met Police.
That's the point.
You say that. Can I come back?
Surely that's the point, because policing in this country has always been by consent. And, of course, a fundamental principle of the British criminal justice system is that everybody is equal under the law. There is nobody who's above the law. The Home Secretary has a very specific set of responsibilities, And the moment they step over the line and they start commanding police officers to do something, we're in a dangerous state. And that's where I think she's broken the rule here. She's made it far more difficult for the police anywhere in this country to do the job properly on Saturday and Sunday, because people are going to start shouting about her. And that's what's really distressing in all of this. She's out of control. She's completely out of control. The Prime Minister has no control over her.
It might be fair for me to just come back myself on this point. Because the gentleman made a very good point about the fact that before Israel had even responded to the outrageous terrorist attack by Hamas, there were people out on the streets in London apparently celebrating the worst attack on Jewish people since the end of the Second World War. There didn't seem to be much policing there, but at the end of the day, the Home Secretary wants what all of us want, which is a calm day on Armistice Day. She does not want to see the sorts of signs the sorts of scenes that we saw in parts of London, and we're getting there because the organisers of the march have now said that they will not march anywhere near the Cenotaph.
Well, they said that some time ago. They haven't suddenly.
They said they will go off at a different time, and I would like to think that because of the discussions that are taking place, what we will see will be more reasonable. I hope the organisers will go a little bit further.
I honestly don't. I honestly wish that that's what was going.
The anti-Semitic chanting that we've seen on previous marches.
But David, I honestly wish that what is going through Suella Braverman's mind is those concerns. I actually think the only thing that is going through her mind when she does a series of these things. Earlier on in the year, she said some horrible things about LGBT people pretending to be gay just to get asylum in this country without any evidence whatsoever. I think all that is going through her mind is how can she become the next leader of the Tory party.
Let me just ask you.
Not the thought that ever went through the mind of Labour politicians.
Let me just ask you, David.
It's never gone through mine.
Let me just ask you, David, because Chris raised the point about breaking the Ministerial Code. The Ministerial Code is perfectly clear that if a minister is going to make a public statement, put out a press release, give an interview, it has to be cleared by number 10. Number 10 are making it clear tonight that Suella Braverman has not done that. Has she therefore broken the Ministerial Code?
That's a matter for number 10.
Oh, come on, give us your opinion, David.
No, I mean,
government.
I can't possibly clear every single thing I say and do.
Yes, but an article in the Times of that prominence?
Do you know, I just think that the bureaucracy around how things get signed off is lost on most people. What are we trying to achieve here?
Well, no, I'm just asking a very simple question. Has she broken the Ministerial Code?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I have no idea.
Do you not know what the Ministerial Code is?
I do know what it is. I've read it. It's a great big long legal document, and I can't start interpreting whether various other people have done it or not. What I support Suella on, and all members of the Cabinet, is saying that those marches need to be a bit more respectful than they have been. That's the real issue.
The Ministerial Code matters. You can't just dismiss it by saying it's a long document.
I'm not dismissing it. I'm not in a position to start making rulings on it.
If you are in government, you have a handle, you have a means of affecting people's lives. And if people do not abide by a Ministerial Code, and if we, in all honesty, we know that the buck stops with the Prime Minister, who is usually, the same thing was with Boris Johnson, is too afraid to actually implement it. The Ministerial Code matters, because otherwise it's chaotic, isn't it?
Which particular paragraph of the Ministerial Code is it? You don't know.
I assume you must have some working knowledge of it.
I have never been a minister.
David, I assume you must have some working knowledge of it, or else you wouldn't be able to abide by it, or you'd be completely at sea. So that would be an interesting place to be as a government.
I have to say, as a member of the public, it's quite scary that, you know, who watches the watchers? Yeah. If people aren't listening to the Ministerial Code, like, who's protecting us? Like, what, can they just do whatever they want?
No. But the argument is whether or not every single thing that you ever say or write has to be signed off, or whether it can be put. Yeah, but it's a rather boring argument. I don't know why we're discussing it when all that's going on in the Middle East.
You're not doing
and we've got
politics any
protests and all the rest of it, and you're talking about interpreting a Ministerial Code.
I don't
on
think you can't accidentally write a piece in a prominent
and
British...
And it falls on the Times.
Okay. Probably like a lot of columnists, I write too much, you know, and occasionally I write one like, I think, oh, did I really write that? But I do think she probably did need to write it, whether or not it was or wasn't within the Ministerial Code. I think she should be defended either because you think what she said was defensible, and I thought the gentleman actually had something of a point. Like a lot of awkward populists, we have difficulty with a lot of us, but they're often sort of saying something that they think that the police or that some institutions have taken sometimes a path of least resistance in being softer on some protests and some social movements than on others. I think that's a very legitimate debate, but I don't think she engaged it by accident.
All right, I'm going to move on. But before I do, I just want to tell you that Question Time is in Bridgewater in Somerset next week. On the panel, we will have, amongst others, one Jacob Rees-Mogg. He is going to be coming along. And in... what was that response there? And in a fortnight's time, we are in Stevenage in Hertfordshire. So if you'd like to come along to either programme, Bridgewater or Stevenage, just go to the Question Time website. Here's the address and follow the instructions there. And we would very much like to see you. Right, let's move on. Let's take another question from Paul Cox.
With annual licences being confirmed for oil and gas in the North Sea, how is this compatible with reaching net zero?
Right, so this was in the King's speech this week, confirmed in the King's speech. Chris, kick us off.
Well, it patently isn't. And in fact, it won't, as we know from the Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho, it won't cut bills for anybody in this country. It won't do anybody any favours in this country. One of the problems is that the oil that might be extracted under this is now very heavy oil, so it can't even be refined in this country. It won't bring financial benefit to this country, and we shouldn't be proceeding with it. And if there were a Labour government, we wouldn't.
So why do you not... I mean, you know that you could stop it in its tracks. Given that Labour is very far ahead in the polls, it may become the next government. If Keir Starmer was to say, we will not honour those licences, the companies probably wouldn't bid for them. You could stop this, but you're choosing not to.
I'm not sure that that's right. We're saying that we're not going to do it. We're not going to issue licences.
But licences that have already been granted, you're not going to
well, presumably they're going to be licensed this year and they'll have run out by the time, because they're only for a year in each case, aren't they? So I can't see that that's the issue. The big issue is, how do we make sure that we are energy secure in this country? How do we get to net zero? How do we make sure that British energy is created in Britain and actually by British companies, so that the benefit comes to the UK rather than go off to Sweden or France or whatever? It seems bizarre to me that so much of the green energy that is being developed in this country at the moment is being done by companies from other countries. That's why we're suggesting we should create a great British energy company. Which would be British money developing lots of green energy in this country, good, secure jobs for the future, and the money coming back into the UK. It seems to me that that's a win-win-win. That's the better solution.
I'm asking about Labour's position, because obviously once a licence has been granted, even if it's on a yearly basis, once the drilling starts, it's started. That's something that Labour could
I think
start.
It's only for, as I understand it,
yes, but
we
once
haven't seen the legislation.
Drilling, they start drilling. I'm just saying you could stop companies
No, because the
doing
licence is only for a year and it's only exploratory. So I don't think the problem exists as you see it, Fiona.
OK, well, let's agree to disagree about that. Liz?
The reality is that we need to look coldly at how do we actually produce the amount of electricity that we will need in future. The mix that we will need for that, the mix will be renewable, will be nuclear. And then we've got to make sure that the jobs that go with this are actually in our local communities. Now, for my own party, we've been working, you mentioned earlier that we've been working alongside in a cooperation agreement with Labour, that we're working to bring in an Cymru, an energy company that would engage with community supplies of renewable energy. And we would also be very interested in devolving the Crown Estate, because that then would allow us to start controlling the way that we develop offshore wind, which has massive potential, and as is, of course, devolved in... Crown Estate is devolved in Scotland, and you could start looking at supply lines and production, rather than, as mentioned, companies from abroad profiting from this. And particularly for Wales, where we're in a situation where historically we have produced more energy than we actually use, we actually require, but we have not been paid. We have not been able to grow our own economy on the back of that. There's some really exciting opportunities here, but we need also to recognise, from a government that has made the funding as difficult as possible, that central government has to enable the infrastructure for this to take place. And the dithering that I have seen since I became an MP in 2015 has frankly been, it's so depressing when we see this as an urgent thing that's coming down the track to us.
OK. And there in the middle, in the grey sweater.
Hiya. As a healthcare professional, the government's response to climate change terrifies me. It is the greatest threat to human health that the UN has declared. We're seeing currently unprecedented droughts in the Amazon. We're seeing the collapse of the West Antarctic ice sheet. We're seeing the collapse of the Greenland ice sheet. We're seeing sea temperatures rise faster than ever before. This is killing people in their thousands across the world on an annual basis. The UK government Or rather, the Welsh Government was the first government to declare a climate emergency. When are they going to start acting like it is an emergency?
David.
Well, first of all, there's been a huge reduction in the amount of carbon emitted in the UK since 1990. A huge, well, I mean, that statistically is correct. I think it's about more than 50%, but you can look it up. The second point is that there's been a huge increase in the amount of renewables and the percentage of electricity that is generated from renewables. And again, you shake your head and say, but you can look that up on an app. However, we are going to need oil and gas until 2050. We've set out a pathway to get to net zero by 2050. We can't just stop using oil and gas overnight. We can decide whether or not we wish to import it from countries across the world, many of which are in quite unstable places, or whether we wish to make use of the oil and gas that lies off our own shores. And in doing so, we increase our energy security.
Exactly
we increase
how?
the amount
Just
of money that
explain
goes to the Treasury.
Exactly how do we increase energy security by doing that?
Because there's a certain amount of oil and gas in the world that's going to be used, and frankly, if it will all go onto an open market.
Exactly.
But
Therefore, how
we
does it
can,
increase our security?
in the worst case scenario, if it's coming from British shores, then Britain can make use of it. But more importantly...
Hang on. No, wait a minute.
Let me finish.
No, that's really important. No, I want you to answer that. You can make them in a moment, but just...
OK, as long as I can make them in a moment.
The government often talks... Hang on, Liz,
as long
wait
as
a
I
minute.
can make them in a moment, because we haven't quite finished
The government talks
yet.
about energy security. So just because I generally can't quite grasp this. If the oil or gas is drilled and a private company then decides it's going to sell it on the open market to whoever it wants to sell it to, how does that help Britain's energy security? We will surely be in line along with everyone else buying it. Or
Well,
am I
we
missing
will,
something?
but I think you'll find that if we had to, we could make sure that it came into the United Kingdom. For a start, it would have to go via the United Kingdom to get out.
So how,
But
what,
can
you
I
would
just
hang
make-
on, no,
I've still got
wait.
two more points.
You can make
Still
them,
got two more
but
points
this is
to make.
important.
Still
So
got two more
you
points.
would force the company, the
No,
private
I'm not going to get into a
company, in order to sell it to us at
very
a time
hypothetical,
of...
Fiona, very hypothetical.
Well, you're saying it would increase our energy
We're
security.
not
I'm
there,
just
are
trying
we?
to understand
Well, we're not
it.
there yet. So the other point I wanted to make is there are
Have you understood it?
No.
No, they're saying.
Well, perhaps this is easier to understand. There are 100,000 jobs tied up with the oil and gas industry in the United Kingdom. 100,000 people would be thrown out of work if we stopped drilling for oil and gas. And secondly, there are billions of pounds of revenue which flow into the Treasury whenever we sell that oil or gas
increase in
abroad.
taxes.
Billions and billions of pounds, which can be put into the health service or to other public services.
And there
so
are
what
people
Labour
who cannot
and Plaid
afford
want to do,
their heating bills, their energy bills this winter, and you are still selling it to the highest buyer
and you, Liz,
abroad.
you, Liz, with all due respect, your party wants to scrap nuclear power. You want to get rid of nuclear power. Your party does. I don't suppose you do personally, but that is your party's policy. Chris wants to get rid of the oil and gas industry, and I'm just saying we need that stuff until 2050.
David, can I just
and there are a lot of
ask
jobs
you-
and a lot of money tied up in it.
Can I just ask you
Money for
one
the
thing,
Treasury.
David? You, in the past, I don't know whether this is still your view, but you said that man-made climate change is in doubt.
No, I've never said that, Chris. Have a look at every speech I've made on the subject, and you'll
You
see that
tweeted
I've
it.
qualified it. I've qualified it every single speech. I've said that CO2 has
So
an
you
impact.
slightly think it?
No, I've said in every single speech, Chris, you know, I love the fact that you want to look at my speeches. Have a look at them. Every single speech I've made, I've said CO2 is a warming gas and obviously has an impact on the climate. But I don't agree.
But you
that
don't
we
think
should
there's a
simply
climate
shut down-
emergency?
I don't think we should be shutting down our oil and gas industry.
You don't think there's a climate emergency that we need to
I
take
think we can get
seriously?
to net zero by 2050, and we're taking it very seriously indeed. Look at what's going on in West Wales with all the floating offshore wind turbines.
Let's
that
hear
we're
it.
You won't devolve Crown
Let's-
Estate, so we get money for it.
Let's hear a bit more from our
Wouldn't help at all
audience,
if we
because
did that.
that's why they're here. The woman here in the front.
I think Labour government made it worse. You've now put our roads down from 30 mile an hour to 20 mile an hour, and we are shooting at emissions, and nothing more but emissions, and
Can
making
I
it
just
worse.
say, we're going to come to that. So hold your fire. Hold your fire. Yes, the person there in this maroon shirt, I think you've got one with the glasses, yeah.
One of Wales's greatest assets is the coastline. Is either of the major parties brave enough to fund development of tidal power?
Tidal power, OK, we'll come back to... And then right at the back there, a man in the maroon sweater, yeah, also with glasses, yeah.
There's a balance between climate change and there's a balance between employment. As the gentleman mentioned, that with offshore would cost potentially 100,000 employment positions, then we see already the Scunthorpe Steelworks are going to lose 3,000 employees as a result of turning to clean energy. South Wales will also lose 2,000 to 3,000, and then the Welsh Government have now succeeded in closing down the last coal sort of mining in that area. There has to be a level. If the UK is 1% of energy efficiency, then there's a time where we've got to consider the man in the street, the woman in the street, as well as the climate for our children for the future.
OK. Camilla. Is confirming annual licences for oil and gas in the North Sea compatible with reaching net zero?
Oh, absolutely not. It was as like a younger person. I have a 2-year-old. I'm terrified of the future. Also, you know, why invest all that money into what we know is a finite resource? We know there is only a certain amount. There are issues with refining it. It's going to be sent to other countries to be refined. Whereas if we could invest in wave power, in like wind power, can we not create the jobs around those industries here for something renewable? And infinitum, it seems quite short-sighted.
OK. Woman here in the front.
I completely agree, and that was also my point. You're talking about closing down of fossil fuel industries, and if we were to actually see that as an opportunity to invest in a green economy and create those jobs around it, surely that would be a way to ease the transition of that.
We can't stop using oil and gas overnight. It's going to take 20 or 30 years to do it. And why would we want to sack 100,000 people and then increase the amount of energy that we're bringing in from unstable parts of the world, which we're already doing at the moment? Why would we do that?
Anne?
I would say underlies this, and it's a good question. Of course, it's incompatible, but the geopolitics of the world are incompatible with many things at the moment. You know, the great goods that we'd all like to go hand in hand and all turn up at the same time are proving rather elusive, and this is one of them. So, to an extent, I understand why this decision has been made, and I know, Fiona, you were testing whether it was not going to be available automatically to UK consumers, but the fact is you will be a player in oil and gas for a few more years, which you wouldn't have been if you hadn't done it. And I think, there's a bit of a common sense point there. Either you decide that on no circumstance would you ever do it because it's incompatible with net zero, and you would like to invest wholly in renewables. I thought tidal power was a very good point that the gentleman raised. But there is a problem. The gains of these things are much further down the line than the situation we're in right now. That's why there's a problem. It's not just like the government went eat cuckoo overnight. It's capable of doing that, but I think not on this issue. I think there is a real challenge here, which is how do you do this? And I kind of half agree with David. I think what will happen, I think it will be phased out sooner, but we have high oil and gas prices in the world for reasons that probably most people will grasp. War in Ukraine, instability in the Middle East, and that could get worse. I'm not surprised that the UK wants to have a transitional use of this. If you look into the legislation as I read it, or the proposal, it does say that will be reinvested in renewables, in more wind power, and in driving that on. I would say, well, let's see more of that. Let's see if that's really doable. But we're not the only country that is fudging away like this. I've just come back from Germany, whereas we know the massive kind of pivot from Russian gas has ended up with them reopening coal. Now, I'm very happy we're not reopening coal in the UK, and I think this is the lesser of two evils.
Do you want to just answer quickly the point, David, about tidal power? Because you asked
well,
about
the
why
government are
investing
in tidal power, but tidal power comes in at around £200 a megawatt hour, which is about 4 or 5 times the current rate. We're also investing a huge amount in wind turbines, offshore wind, which the price has come down on that to a level that actually makes it quite difficult to get people investing in tidal energy as well. So there is the point is there is a huge amount going on, but we're not going to be able to switch over to generating all of our energy from renewables overnight, and we are going to need oil and gas over the next 30 years. And I don't want to see 100,000 people needlessly losing their jobs while we bring the oil and gas in from other parts of the world, which are not stable, which answers your question as to why that helps us. Because we don't want to be dependent on unstable parts of the world for our energy.
But just imagine if in this country we actually had an industrial strategy.
But we've got one, Chris.
Which decided... No,
we've got one. We absolutely have. Look what's happening in Port Talbot, Chris, just down the road from you, where we are spending £500 million to create an electric arc furnace. It's going to save 5,000 jobs and a supply chain, and £100 million to support people who may lose their jobs as a result. That's an industrial policy, Chris. 2,000
people are losing their jobs down there, and another 3,000 elsewhere in the UK, and we're not going to be able to produce our own virgin steel in this country because you've not decided to act.
We never could, because we had to import the iron ore, Chris.
David, please just let me finish a sentence and a half at least. Just imagine if all the wind turbines that are on the mountains in Wales were actually made in Wales. That'd be a strategy, wouldn't it? Because that'd be jobs for people in this country, and it'd be money coming back into the Welsh economy and into the British economy. And I would also like to see us insulating homes properly in this country. That would also be jobs, serious jobs for people in this country, and that would more than meet the 100,000. But you need to have a government that is determined to have an industrial strategy where we build things in our own country.
Is that a spending commitment then? I mean, look, you know, everything you've said is you've about 4 kind of almost spending commitments in there. You have to admit, it's not as simple as saying all of these things need to happen. Your Labour, I think, very reasonably came up with a green jobs strategy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've just laid out.
And had to push it 2 years down the line because it couldn't afford 28 billion a year. We are in a really bad position on public finances, and to simply say, well, we can just absolutely have all these gains when we want them, and if only you just got rid of the Tories, it would all happen tomorrow. I think you know that's not quite the way.
Well, that's why I didn't say any of that, and so don't. I didn't.
You said
I said very specific. I laid out specifically what we want to do if we get to form a government. There's no guarantee that we'll get to form a government, but we would like to form a government. And of course, everything won't happen on day one. That's not how the world works, and I didn't ever suggest that it would. But if you had a government that started on day one to have a plan to put it in operation, then you might actually change the way this country's economy works.
OK. I'm going to stop it there because I'm going to move on to far and away the most popular question of the night.
We know what this is.
Raised already. So, Valerie Gregory, is that you? You're not Valerie, are you? Valerie Gregory, where?
I'm here.
Oh, right, OK. There we go. Let's have your question.
OK. Should the rest of the UK follow the Welsh implementation of a nationwide 20 miles per hour speed limit?
Right. Now, I don't need to tell any of you this here, sitting here, but for those not so familiar with it outside Wales, in September, Wales became the first nation in the UK to impose a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on all residential and built-up areas, with a few exceptions if the councils want to do that. But basically, that's the... Well, OK, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and that's 35% of all roads in Wales. Is that not right then, Liz?
Well, the county in which I live, Gwynedd, made 85 exceptions to this. So the sense that it...
Out of how many roads?
Well, that is more than the communities that we have. So that is 85 exceptions, and that is higher than any of the other counties of North Wales put together. Now, where I would question how Welsh Government has handled this is the imposing from above. But when I drove here from Crewe, the whole of Crewe was 20 miles an hour when I went down the high street. This isn't just happening in Wales. Now, I do have an issue, and I do understand that people have an issue with this being imposed from above, and I think that it will be important to make sure that we can put more, that it becomes relatively easy when communities choose that they want to raise their speed limit from 20 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, that they're able to do that. But it does interest me that road traffic accidents are the largest cause of children's serious injury in Wales. And that is children who are walking and cycling. And that when it comes to the consultation, which Welsh Government should have done with the communities, I expect the community councils and the county councils to ask parents, to ask cyclists, to ask walkers, do you really want these to go up? But the other question I would ask...
So can I just be clear, Liz, because you supported this policy, didn't you?
Well, the county in which I operate is the one that has brought in the highest number of exemptions.
But what I mean is Plaid has supported this policy. I mean, it's just you're talking as if this was something the Welsh Government brought in which was nothing to do with Plaid, but Plaid absolutely supported it, didn't they?
And also, before this came in, there were Tory Senedd members deeply supportive. Now, I must say one thing also. We're discussing this, and I know that the Tory members a member of this panel will probably address this issue as well. But there are no Senedd members here to be held account for this. I think if we're going to be talking about something which is, since the Uxbridge election, the Tories have been making an awful lot of directing towards drivers' interests. But
you can obviously speak for Plaid, Liz, and it just sounds like you're... I am. Exactly, but it just sounds like you're suggesting that you think Plaid have perhaps got this wrong, that they should have...
No,
it's a top-down consultation that has not worked.
Anything that saves up to 10 lives a year from traffic accidents, I'm in favour of it.
All right, well, let's go to our audience, because I know lots of people... Should we come back to you, madam? Because you clearly feel very strongly about this.
Right, I'm going to say this, that I'm speaking on behalf of near on everybody in Wales, including
That
the
is quite a
400...
claim, if I may
Well,
say.
I'm doing it. I'm 465,000 plus signatures on a petition that Mark Drakeford has chosen to just say, no, he's not changing it, OK? So why, then, have you spent £33 million on this project where National Health, the NHS need help, the emergency services need help, potholes need doing in our roads, dental care is horrendous. I had my granddaughter, who I have custody of with my grandson, in the summer, 5 weeks in pain. And every day I emailed my surgery, I phoned my surgery, no appointments. In the end, I had to take her overseas to be told the treatment should have been done weeks prior, and it cost me $575, and she had to lose a tooth and have a filling. Can you answer that? Can you honestly answer that? The NHS is dying because it's got no money. You waste £33,000 on signs that you're now reverting back to 30
million
from 20.
3 million, actually.
Yeah,
yes,
million
pounds, yeah.
beg your pardon.
OK.
OK, so the NHS need help, emergency services need help, dental care need help. Do something about it, please.
All right. The man here in the glasses.
I also live in Gwynedd, and I agree also that the way it's been implemented there is good. I do object to this constant use of a blanket imposition, which is not. It's certainly not in Gwynedd. Also, as an ex-police officer, I have unfortunately seen the devastation caused by accidents involving children, involving and fatal accidents that could have been avoided with less speed. I'm
so
not
you
talking
support
about
it in principle?
I do support it in principle, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, for 20 to 30 mile an hour. I'm talking speed in general. And if any of us drive constantly, you will see that speed is an issue, and anything to be done to be tackled that is very important.
Woman here in the grey.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I feel like with the amount of money that was spent, especially I live on Anglesey, they've cancelled a third crossing. They haven't finished fixing the Menai Bridge. That's now a one road situation at the moment. The amount of money that's been spent on this, if you're going to do it properly. Fix the roads, put in more public transport. The village that I live in has one bus go through a day, So there's a lot more that could have been done. If you're going to do this, I just think they should have done it properly and as a bigger job,
Let's be clear, every sensible person will support 20-mile-an-hour speed limits outside schools, hospitals, or where there are vulnerable people walking. It is the way this has been done. It is a blanket limit because it's been brought in on all roads where there's currently a 30-mile zone. Unless councils want to jump through a load of hoops, we can.
Hang on, lots of people who live here are disagreeing with you.
But basically, the Welsh Government themselves were bragging about the fact they were bringing this in. The second point is, it has cost £30 million to do that, just at a time when the Welsh Labour government are the only government in the United Kingdom who are cutting NHS budgets, and they've just ordered a cut of £65 million. Now, one of that lady's absolutely right. I had to phone an ambulance the other day for my father-in-law, 999, at 11 o'clock in the morning. It turned up at, 11 o'clock in the morning, and it turned up 15 hours later at 4 in the morning, and then he spent 6 hours on the back of an ambulance waiting for a bed to come available. That's Labour-run National Health Service.
I mean, the Welsh Government, as you well know, David, is claiming that this policy will save them
20%.
They're getting 20% more money. They're getting 20% more money per head than patients in England.
Hang on. David, let me just interrupt for a second. Just for a bit of balance here, the Welsh Government is saying that it hopes it will save money because in terms of fewer casualties, fewer fatalities, and the stress that puts on the NHS?
Well, we'll see, but they've certainly got money to spend when they want it. And top of their list of things to spend money on is not the NHS, it's £100 million for dozens of extra politicians. And I hope you're going to ask Chris, would you rather see more nurses, doctors and paramedics or more Senedd members? Because I'd rather see the money going on the National Health Service and not on members of the
What I'm going to
Senedd.
ask Chris is the actual question. So, should the rest of the UK follow the Welsh implementation of a nationwide 20 miles per hour speed limit? Now, obviously, the Welsh Government has been Labour for a long time now, obviously supported by Plaid Cymru. Is this something that Labour would like to see? Do you support it?
lots of places in England are already have 20 mile an hour, and Scotland and Northern Ireland, large parts of Belfast, for instance, and Edinburgh and lots of other places, and large chunks of London, for instance, have 20 miles. Rishi Sunak's constituency, his local Conservative council, they're implementing 20 mile an hour speed limits in their area, and there's a good reason for that. If you just look at this constituency, I've got the figures here. In the last 10 years, there have been 1,672 casualties in road traffic accidents in this constituency. Last year, there were 92. 25 of them were serious, and 3 of them were fatal. And in fact, the speed limit on the road just outside here, on getting into here, was changed from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour after a long campaign by people because there have been several fatalities on the road.
So would you welcome this policy across England, then, for example?
No, so I believe in devolution, and I think where we've got it a bit wrong, and where I think there must be a review of the way it's been implemented, is that some of the bits are just bonkers. It's not blanket, by the way, and David, I really wish you would stop that line, because 60% of the roads in Wales are 40 miles an hour or faster, exactly the same as they were before the...
Unless the council
it's exactly the same as it was before the rule was changed. But there are some areas where it's just a bit, frankly, bonkers. You go from 20 to 30 back to 20. And I think that the guidance... Lee Waters, the Minister, has already said that the guidance is going to be reviewed. I think it should be, so that local authorities can make better, more sensible, common-sense decisions on the particular roads in their areas. David's right. Everybody believes that outside a school and a hospital and a clinic and a chemist and in some residential areas it should be 20 miles an hour. But, I'm the MP for the Rhondda. The thing is, that's nearly every road in the Rhondda. And so for people trying, buses, and for people trying to get to their clients as care workers and so on, it's really difficult. Can I just answer the thing that David threw
very quickly, because I've got to bring the rest of the panel.
About politicians, about more politicians. It's a bit rich of David to do this, because he's voted in his time as an MP for 35 additional politicians as police and crime commissioners and 13 extra mayors, all in England. And Boris Johnson gave us 105 extra members of the House of Lords.
Not hearing an answer to the question, Chris.
So I am answering the politician.
I want to take up that...
Hang on. No, wait. No, tell you what. Let's not talk about that, because that's not the question. Call me old-fashioned. The question is about the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and that is what we're sticking to. The woman there in the green dress.
I'd just like to say what an expensive gamble you've taken with you say you're going to take back some of the signs you've put up already, so we'll change 20 miles per hour back to 30. Going to cost more money. Right. Why would you do that? Why didn't you think about it first before implementing and putting it in force?
All right. Camilla, what's your view on this?
I remember when it came in London, and initially it just seemed absolutely nonsensical. It's especially, I do agree with it past schools and all that kind of thing, but on a Sunday, there's no kids there, and it was.
Well, there might be football clubs and that kind of thing.
But it was quite irritating, and it was quite a lot to get your head round. But we did get our heads around it. It's not all the roads, but it is a lot of the roads, and we did start seeing a lot less fatalities with regards to children getting hit or, drunk drivers veering off the road and taking out someone just trying to walk. I would like to see if the Welsh Government keeps its promise, that they're going to keep reviewing it and listening to the feedback given by people. We'll see. I think if that comes into play, I think there definitely needs to be just common sense with it, have it where it's needed, don't have it where it's not needed. I mean, it's incredibly irritating when you're on an empty road and you have to remain going 20. We're all busy, we've all got stuff to do. But at the same time, if it is outside places where there are vulnerable people, then I do agree with it, if it's done sensibly.
Sensibly, all right. Anne.
Thank you. I really rather agree with that. I think when 20 miles an hour came in, a lot of people thought, we were all sort of, if you're of a certain age, you was kind of brought up as if, there's a God-given 30 miles an hour, wasn't it? I thought the signs sort of came down and sort of planted there by the Almighty. And I do think it was, on the whole, beneficial to slow down to 20 miles an hour in built-up areas.
So do you think the rest of the UK should do it? That's the question.
No, absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I think what will happen is it's much better if these things... And one reason I'm happy to see this kind of experimentation, and devolution is the right word that Chris used here. We do need to try things. We need to try different things in different parts of the UK. And if people don't like them, we'll find out. I think that there was a question in Wales, and as I say, I came up on the train today. You might be able to tell by, but I'm not from just round the corner. So I don't know really how I'd feel in practice if I was in a community here. I'd have to look at how it worked. But I do think if you're seeing a lot of pushback, is it the case that one way or other this will be looked at and adjusted? Or is it a bit the case that there's a slight kind of ideological zeal behind it, in which case it really isn't open to question? The important thing, I think, in communities where we do this kind of policy experimentation, which I think is on the whole quite a good thing, is what is your mechanism for listening to the people who don't agree with you? And how open are you to that? So that would be the only question that I might pose to those who have a very strong view on this.
OK. The man there in the blue jacket, yes.
I think there are a few points here. First of all, devolution isn't the devolution of decision-making by the electorate that the powers are devolved to. You still need to consult. And Labour, frankly, they've not consulted. The Senate has not consulted and listened. Second of all, I'm in complete agreement in built-up and residential areas for 20 miles an hour. If you go onto the A55 at 70 miles an hour and go towards Chester, there's a slip road at Llanthillas that goes from 70 to 20 miles an hour. Used to be 30, it's now 20. How is that a common sense implementation of a policy?
All right. The woman there in the glasses.
How have rural communities, it's very different to having 20 miles an hour. Nobody in this room is arguing about hospitals, built-up areas where there's lots of population. But we're living in very rural places here, and the bus services have been affected, they've been reduced. Some people are having to change their whole way of going into work and times into work because they're not as few. Whoever said it would just add 1 minute or 5 minutes to a journey, frankly, has never driven in rural North Wales.
So how long is it adding to your journeys, for example?
Well, it added another 10, 15 minutes to my journey just coming here tonight. So it would take 20 minutes normally. It took me 35 minutes, and that was in an evening. But I know that people are just... And delivery drivers and businesses are now not able to do as many deliveries and collections. So that's having an economic impact on some people.
OK. A man there in the grey T-shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo what Chris has said, the local road being reduced from 40 to 30. It's a valid point. I'm a firefighter, and obviously we have to respond to those incidents. So I'm quite conflicted on this. Whilst I think it does improve safety in built-up areas, you know, our fire service is facing massive increase in response times due to cuts. And North Wales being as rural as it is, those firefighters have to respond from their homes. So they are abiding by a 20-mile-an-hour law too, which increases response times to try and help those people.
Presumably when you're blue lighting it, you go...
No, because they respond from their homes in their cars to get to the station.
Oh, I see, to get to the station, I've got
That's
you.
right. So whilst I can, for me, I don't mind driving a little bit slower, but also at the same time, how many lives will that cost? Especially when response times are increasing massively due to the downgrade in our service by the Labour government.
So what would you like to see happen? Would you like to see this blanket ban lifted, or do you just want to see it tinkered with?
I think Liz hit the nail on the head. There should have been some form of consultation on this.
Right, OK. We could talk
I'd
about
go further. I think, sorry, just one thing. I think there should be a full review. We should review after...
But you guys actually voted for this, and not only that, but you've also voted to stop any new roads being built in Wales as well, so we're not even going to be able to find the car park.
Our hour is up, I'm afraid. So, Chris, I'm going to stop you coming back in because we are out. I'm so sorry, but we are actually over time now, so I'm going to have to stop you. Forgive me. And also to all of you, because there were so many hands up about that, but we got it in. So thank you very much indeed. That's it. Tonight from Llandudno. We got through our questions, and by and large we stuck to the questions as well, just about. If you can't stay up late and watch us after 10 o'clock news, don't forget we're on iPlayer at 8 o'clock every week. And thank you very much, can I say, to Caroline David, Helen Walker and Richard Veselowski, who gave us these lovely pictures of glorious Llandudno. From all of us here, until next week, bye-bye.
Someone should make a fucking drum and bass tune out of this fucking... I know you'd probably get sued, wouldn't you? By some clart ass BBC fucking ditch shit programme. I don't know. Fuck me. Can I just say I hate Tories with a passion? I'm just going to point that out. If you vote Tory, you're a fucking cunt. I'm just going to point that out right now. And it's mad the way these fucking people who are on these shows are all right-wing fucking neoliberal clusterfucks from the fucking 80s. And people still believe this shit that comes out their fucking mouth. Half these people don't even know what to turn on a fucking computer, and yet we're supposed to listen to them and clap. I mean, to be fair, 20 miles an hour is pretty stupid. Totally agree with that. It's a bit dumb. Just whatever. Anyway, in the future, you won't even need a car anyway, because all the fucking cars will be like fucking robots, and you'll be out of a job because of AI. We know who's pushing the AI. All the big giant corporations who want to fucking sack you. And that's who wants to push AI. But anyway, that's a different story altogether. Fuck that other bitch from Politico. She's a fucking... It's mad. Politico, fucking maddest fucking spectacle you've ever read in your life. Right wing. She's a fucking right winger. I'm pretty sure you don't know from American politics, but I watch a lot of fucking American politics. She's a fucking Republican. The thing is, right, when you watch American politics, it's quite hard to figure out who's the fascist, because both Democrats and Republicans are both fascists. They're all fucking ass-licking to corporations. What's it called? Autocracy? I can't even say the fucking word. Anyway, you know what I mean, right? They're all fucking in bed with fucking... Like, the other day I made a video, which is fucking hilarious, that our entire economic policy was a fucking mistake based on a spreadsheet error. Like, you couldn't make this shit up, and now they want to give us AI. Fuck my fucking life. You wonder why I don't stream this shit, because it just frustrates me to fuck. I have to put up with religious fucking nutards arguing over which god's a better god because people killed each other. It's like, solve the fucking problem. Stop reading a fucking book that says there's a magical guy in the fucking sky. Would be helpful, you twat. I mean, let's get to the point of the argument. It's not about Palestinians and Israelis. It's fucking God. Why are you killing each other in the first place, bitch? Yeah, you read a fucking stupid book. Fucking wizards. Fuck wizards. Can we all agree to fuck wizards? Not literally. Metaphorically, clearly. Can't fuck a wizard, they're magical. They don't even exist. You get the point though, right? Unless it's Halloween. Go for it. Pretty sure people do weird shit on Halloween. Anyway, fuck this show. It's annoying. And people are clapping. Why are you clapping? Because you're all fucking idiots. Stop clapping. Let's clap. We all just decided politicians are shit. Global warming isn't a fucking problem. No, pollution's a problem. Even if you used to take out the whole plants fucking eat the shit that we fucking put in the fucking atmosphere. We chop down the fucking rainforest. That's not going to help anybody, is it? No. You're putting carcinogens in the fucking air. More shit comes out of your fucking car than I smoke. Ban cars, bitch. I'm just saying, ban cars. The amount of shit that comes out of a fucking car is way more deadly than what comes out my fucking smoke. I'm just putting that fucking fact out for anybody bothered to do fucking science at school. You crackheads. Well, oh, it's not as deadly. Yes, it is. Shut up. Fucking nonce. Well, we don't want wind farms on the skyline because it looks ugly. Fucking shut up, bitch. Shut up, you fucking yokel twat. First person to cry about the fucking taxes are the same people who say I don't want wind farms on my land because it doesn't look good. Fuck you, motherfucker. Go die. Please go die. The fuck, you would have me driving a fucking cart with a horse. You fucking nonce. Honestly, fucking hate these fucking cunts. Half these people, fucking boomers, don't know shit. They all think they're smart because they've got Google and a phone. Fucking useless bastards, honestly. And that's why you should never trust people who vote. Because they're the worst kind of people. You know, the vast majority of people don't vote because they know the system's full of shit. The only people who vote are the fucking terrorists who run our country. Tories. Bastards. Labour can't even be asked to vote either. They're just as bad. You just fucking cunts. Ugh. Our country is going down a pan. I mean, it's already in the pan, to be fair. It's already shit. You got Suella Braverman, the most racist black person I've ever met. And I knew a black person who threw fucking... No, he didn't, technically speaking. I'll tell you the story. I used to go to school, right? Most racist fucking school in Liverpool. Fucking racist as fuck. You can probably Google it. You'll find it easy as you like, right? Fucking bunch of white guys throwing stones at the bus saying fucking nigger this, nigger that. Who stood next to them? Fucking Kunte fucking Kinte right there. Black as a fucking African. Didn't do shit. Just watched as his mates hurled stones. Shouting fucking nigger. That's Suella Braverman. Do you think people made up the word house nigger? No, we fucking didn't, bitch. It's a fact. She's a fucking house nigger and a racist. She's a fucking racist. Just because she's black, don't get shit confused, motherfucker. Go watch the Django Unchained if you're confused. Go watch fucking Quentin Tarantino movie. Right there. Right there. Fucking bitch. All these fucking rat clown fucking motherfuckers want to fucking tell you that the world's going to shit. No, they want to stay in power. They will tell you we're getting invaded by a bunch of fucking immigrants. There's 60, 56, 70 fucking million people who live in Britain. You know why there's no housing? Because they convince you that buying a house is good for you. That's what they convince you. Buy your own home. Give your money to a bank instead of a local council. Where do you think your fucking money goes that you would normally pay to the council? Goes to a bank. And you wonder why the banks are making record profits? I don't, because you're all fucking brainwashed and think you should buy your own house. It's their job to build houses. Not their job to sell you them, you fucking clowns. Fucking fuck, this country's full of fucking idiots and Tories, mostly, who've all been convinced by right-wing newspapers, in case you don't fucking know. The vast majority of the media you will get in the fucking United Kingdom is full of racist, xenophobic fucking cunts. Fact. Take a look at the audience. 87% of the population of Britain is white. And the only people who actually matter are the fucking ones who are rich, who feed the xenophobic shit to the rest of you motherfuckers who normally would be a very nice person down the pub. You listen to our media for at least 10 minutes, you'll soon lose the fucking shit. Then you'll be marching on the cenotaph like you give a fuck about Palestine. Where the fuck have you been for the past, I don't know, 2 centuries? Do you think Palestine just happened yesterday? You fucking clowns. Honestly, this fucking country's so fucking dumb. Let's all march. Let's march, yeah. Why?